Korea has agreed to compensate Korean labourers who were forced to work in Japanese factories during the Second World War. It's an attempt to resolve one of the thorny historical issues that have hindered relations between Seoul and Tokyo and could lead to closer ties between the neighbouring countries. Well, let's speak to our correspondent Jean Mackenzie in the South Korean capital, Seoul. Jean, just tell us more about what's been agreed and how significant it is.
Well, this agreement is actually more significant than it looks on paper. Yes, it is about compensating the victims, the Korean victims, for the work that they had to do for the Japanese under Japanese colonial rule in Japanese mines and factories where they had to work in horrendous conditions for no pay. They say they were almost treated as slaves. Now, this compensation has been a long time coming and it is significant for the victims, but it is also about fixing the relationship between South Korea and Japan. The relations between these two countries have been marred for decades because of these issues that stem back to the colonial period. And the president here, President Yoon, when he came to office last year, he promised to try and fix this relationship. Now, that meant resolving this issue of forced wartime labour because it is one of the final sticking points. And he appears to have found a way to do it. However, it is a controversial agreement he's come up with because rather than getting the Japanese companies to pay, which is what the courts here had wanted, what the courts here had said had to happen and what the victims wanted, the president here has said that the South Korean companies will step in and foot the bill so that these victims finally get compensated.
And what's the reaction been from families?
The victims and their families are bitterly disappointed because they wanted the Japanese to pay. That is what they have been fighting for many, many years now. Some of them even today are saying that they won't accept this money. But time was running out. Of the 15 victims that the court said should be compensated, only 3 of them still are alive. So this really was one of the last opportunities to make sure that some of the victims saw the money while they were still alive. And as we've been saying, there are much bigger issues at stake here, namely the issue of security in East Asia. Japan and South Korea are facing many of the same security challenges at the moment. The increasing threat posed by North Korea, the rise of China, and their ally, the United States, has wanted them to work far more closely together. Now, this agreement paves the way for the US, Japan, and South Korea to start cooperating far more closely on issues of security. So, yes, the victims are upset with this agreement, but it is being seen as a diplomatic success here in Seoul and in Tokyo.
Jean Mackenzie there in Seoul. Thank you very much indeed.